Welcome back, everybody. Hope everyone is doing well. My name is Jason. I'll be your host on this CFL talk show, Hussey's Huddle. In this video, I preview Week 3 of the 2022 CFL season. Very exciting slate on tap this week. But really quickly before we get started, if you want to support the channel, as always, be sure to hit like and subscribe. I really appreciate it. And I also want to say that after the game tonight, I am going to be hopping on a Twitter space with my buddy Cole McGarvey, and we're going to be just talking about the Rough Riders and Alouettes game. Hope you guys can join us for that. I'll drop a link down in the description. But with that said, let's get started with today's video. So we have a very interesting slate of games this week. As I said in the beginning, we have a couple of rivalry matchups, a couple of matchups that you wouldn't even consider really to be rivalries, but I think are interesting matchups nonetheless. And we'll get started today with the first matchup of the week, which is the Saskatchewan Roughriders visiting the Montreal Alouettes in the Alouettes home opener. The Saskatchewan Roughriders are favored here on the TSN app by 3.5 points. And it's going to be very interesting in this game, I think, from the Saskatchewan Roughriders perspective, how they deal with the loss of their center, Dan Clark, who I believe is their best offensive lineman up front. He is their linchpin of that unit, and it's going to be very interesting how Logan Bandy, who is their projected starter to fill that role, does so in this game in his first career start. And I think in the meantime, I think there's going to be some growing pains with Clark out of there. I think this Alouettes defensive line is a lot better than people give it credit for. You have a lot of good veterans in there and a good rotational guy there in Michael Wakefield, who can play a little bit of inside and outside. I think they're going to have a big day and kind of slow this Saskatchewan Roughriders offense down. And then for Cody Fajardo, I'm seeing if he's going to continue his hot start to begin the year. He's been relatively efficient. He's keeping the turnovers low. I don't know if he's turned the ball over once in the first 2 weeks. So very interesting to keep that going for Fajardo for 3 straight weeks. And then on the Montreal side, obviously you're talking about Trevor Harris, who's going to be making his first start of the season for the Alouettes after taking over for Vernon Adams in the last game. And honestly, people forget that Trevor Harris actually had the Alouettes in a position to win that game, if not for the botched kick. So I thought Trevor Harris actually played pretty well last week, all things considered. So I'm very interested to see how he plays this week against a very scary Saskatchewan Roughriders front seven. He's going to have to make very quick decisions with the lack of running back back there with William Stanback's injury. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with Trevor Harris and how he plays in this game. They're also going to be minus Jake Winnipeg and Chris Aki in this game, two of their biggest impact starters on this team. So it's going to be very interesting to see how the Alouettes deal with those losses and how the Roughriders deal with the loss of Dan Clark. But ultimately, I think the Alouettes are just a little bit too banged up here, and that's why I'm going to go with the Roughriders to win this game by a score of 20-18. Earlier in the week, I was leaning towards taking Montreal in this one, but then I learned that Eugene Lewis is a bit banged up. I believe he's going to play, but he may not be 100%. Winnipeg is not going to play, like I said, and Aki on that linebacking core is going to be a big loss as well for the Alouettes. So I'm very interested to see how those losses affect this team this week. But ultimately, I can't bet against the Roughriders and what we've seen from them. I think they're going to be a very scary team in terms of their front seven, and I think they're going to ultimately come out on top in this game. And then over on the community tab, the vote was in favor of the Saskatchewan Roughriders 83% of the time, so that is who the fans are riding with in this one. And then our second game of the week, which is a Grey Cup rematch between the Hamilton Tiger Cats visiting the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, with Winnipeg opening as a 4.5 point favorite over on TSN. And I'm very interested, as always, with this matchup the last couple of years, the matchup between the Hamilton Tiger Cats offensive line and the star-studded defensive line for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, which hasn't made too much of an impact the first couple of weeks. They've done enough to get the job done in those two matchups against Ottawa, but I'm looking to see a little bit more from them, and I think they're going to get it this week, where they always seem to play their best when they play against Hamilton, and a relatively weak offensive line for the Tiger Cats that has looked a little bit shaky the last couple of weeks. And honestly, in week 2, you saw a lot of improvement from that offensive line for the Tiger Cats, but I think a lot of that was scheme, a lot of swing out passes to get the ball out of Dane Evans' hands quickly. I don't know if you're going to be able to do that as much against this great Winnipeg defense, but if you can protect, Winnipeg has shown some vulnerability deep down the field. Guys like Winston Rose haven't played too well so far this season, and maybe you could attack the defense down the field if you're the Tiger Cats with all these weapons like Tim White and Braylon Addison that you have, and make a big difference in this game and win it that way. But you're going to have to play very well up front in order to do so. Dane Evans very much a pocket passer as well, so he needs that protection up front. So I'm keeping an eye on that. And then I think you're looking at Dane Evans and his ability to keep his turnovers down. The turnovers have just been way too high the first couple of weeks, and I think honestly Evans played pretty well last week when you take away the turnovers, but those turnovers are just such a huge part of the story the first couple of weeks. He needs to take away those fumbles, and he cannot make those risky throws in the red zone like he was doing this week, or last week, sorry, against Calgary. So I'm keeping my eye on Dane Evans. Can he keep those turnovers low against a team that he typically has turned the ball over a lot against in the Winnipeg Blue Bombers? And then from the Winnipeg side of things, I'm looking to see if their offensive line can continue to improve over what we've seen the first couple of weeks. They just haven't been their same dominant selves. They were better in week 2 than they were in week 1, generating a little bit more of a push, getting that running game going a little bit. But honestly, against this Hamilton defensive line, it may be tough sledding to get that running game going. And you're also missing their center, Michael Couture, who was just placed on the 6-game injured list. Going to be very interesting to see how that interior of this defensive line plays against those star-studded defensive tackles on the Hamilton side. So I'm keeping my eye on that. And, can Collaros continue to attack this defense through the air, even if they don't have a running game? That is going to be a key important part to this game, because I don't think Winnipeg's going to be able to run the ball very well, like I said. So I think Collaros is going to have to beat this team with his arm. But ultimately, I just don't like Hamilton too much in this matchup. I got to go with Winnipeg to win this game by a score of 23-15, covering the spread. I just think that they just have such a psychological edge over Hamilton. They're playing, at home against Hamilton in this game, so I'm very interested to see if they could beat Hamilton yet again, but ultimately I'm going to go with Winnipeg to win. I just think Hamilton, they're just not ready to beat a team like Winnipeg after we saw them, collapse against a team like Calgary last week. And then over on the community tab, we actually have a nail-biter of a vote with the Hamilton Tiger Cats just barely edging out the Winnipeg Blue Bombers with 52% of the vote. So that is who the fans are going to be rolling with in this one. And then moving on to Saturday's action between the Calgary Stampeders hosting the Edmonton Elks, with Calgary opening as around a 9-point favorite here. I didn't actually see the line posted by TSN by the time I was recording this video, so I'm using other sources. But most sportsbooks have it around an 8.5, 9-point spread in this one. So a pretty heavily favored Calgary team coming off a big come-from-behind win against the Hamilton Tiger Cats last week. And my big question is, are the Calgary Stampeders going to continue that momentum, or are they going to come out flat like we've seen so many teams do after a big emotional victory? So I'm keeping my eye on the Stampeders in this one. Are they going to capitalize on that momentum, really turn it into, a launching pad for a great season here? Or are they going to have a letdown here against the Edmonton Elks, who played very, very well last week considering how badly they played in week 1. I thought Edmonton played very well last week, so we'll have to see how Calgary responds to that. And in particular, I'm very interested to see how Bo Levi Mitchell plays this week. Can he string multiple high-level games together, really use this as a launching pad for a great season? Very excited to see how the Stampeders do in this one. And then from the Elks perspective, I'm really interested to see how Kenny Lawler continues to be that number 1 receiver for this team. Obviously, he was getting a whack load of targets. I think he had like 17 targets last week. He had 12 catches for 149 yards, so you're not going to complain about the usage there. But ultimately, can he continue to shoulder so much of a load on this Edmonton Elks receiving core? It's going to be very interesting to see. Obviously, Nick Arbuckle, can he, play at a higher level, limit the turnovers, and, play at a higher level than what we've seen so far this season? And it's going to be a very interesting game, I think. It could be a potential trap game here for Calgary, but ultimately, I just think they're just such a solid organization, and that you saw that mental toughness the last couple of weeks coming from behind. I think they're going to get off to a little bit better start this week, get a lead early in the game instead of relying on coming back like they did the last couple of weeks. And ultimately, I have them winning this game by a score of 30-20 here over the Edmonton Elks. So just covering that spread. It's going to be a very interesting game, I think, but ultimately, I have Calgary coming out on top in this one at home. And then over on the community tab, the Stampeders are leading with 64% of the vote as of the recording of this video. And so that is who the fans are rolling with in this one. And then our final matchup of the week is also, I think, the most intriguing matchup of the week. And that is the Toronto Argonauts visiting the BC Lions on Saturday night at BC Place, with the Lions opening here as a 4-point favorite. And I think with this game, it's going to be very, very interesting to see just how good the West really is. If BC ends up being a very, very good team, if they win this game, go to 2-0, this really shows you how good the West is this year, and it really opens up the possibility for a crossover later on this season. But in terms of these teams specifically, I think we're going to see if the bye week really killed the momentum for the BC Lions after having this great performance week 1. Then they have to sit out week 2 because of the bye week. Can they continue that momentum and bring that forward into a very good opponent here in the Toronto Argonauts? And I think that is the big thing with this game, is just the step up in competition from the Elks to the Argos. I think especially when this BC Lions offense is going against the Toronto Argonauts defense that is just not the same as the Edmonton Elks, especially up front. And I think this BC offensive line is going to face their first real test of the season with guys like Sean Oakman, Jagarrett Davis, and Shane Ray up front, going to be really testing this offensive line early and often in this game. Can they still have the same effectiveness that they showed against the Edmonton Elks, or even close to that? I'm very interested to see how that matchup plays out. And then on the other side of the ball, I think Andrew Harris is going to play a huge role for the Toronto Argonauts in this one, because I think BC's defense is more so built to play pass coverage. They're not the most physical defense in the world, so I think Toronto could really capitalize that and really beat them up early in the game, give Andrew Harris 22, 25 carries, and really beat this front seven for BC up early in this game and really wear them down by the fourth quarter. And ultimately, I think another thing to watch out for is turnovers in this one. McLeod Bethel-Thompson had a couple of really stupid turnovers in week 2 against the Alouettes. And I'm very interested to see if he can, take that out of his game. And can Nathan Rourke continue to avoid the turnovers that, he avoided in week 1. So I think whatever quarterback makes the most mistakes is likely going to end up on the losing end in this one. And ultimately, my pick for this one, I was really close with who I was going to pick. But ultimately, I'm going to go with the Toronto Argonauts to win this game by a score of 27-23. Very close, but I just think that defensive line for Toronto is going to show that BC offensive line a little something in this one. And I think Andrew Harris is going to make a huge difference for this Toronto Argonauts running game, and ultimately I think the Argos are going to come out on top in this one. But apparently those on the community tab completely disagree with me in this case, with them taking the BC Lions 93% of the time. I believe that is the most lopsided vote we've seen so far this season, and that is who the fans are going to be rolling with in this game. But at the end of the day, those are just my predictions for week 3 of the 2022 CFL season. Be sure to let me know yours down in the comment section. And with that said, hope everyone enjoys the games this week, has a great day, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.